Welcome to the Holiness Today podcast. In this episode, I have a conversation with Michael Thompson, the Church of the Nazarene's General Counsel, and Joseph Miller, the Associate General Counsel. Mike and Joe share what the office of the General Counsel does and how their previous legal experience helps serve the Church of the Nazarene's mission today. I'm here with Michael Thompson and Joe Miller. Michael Thompson is the General Counsel, and Joe Miller has just been hired as the Associate General Counsel. But before we get too far into this podcast, for all of our listeners, what is a General Counsel and what is the role that the General Counsel plays for the Church of the Nazarene?
Well, first of all, Nate, thanks for the opportunity to be with you on the podcast, something that Joe and I have been looking forward to. In answer to your question, the General Counsel is the primary attorney for an organization, and within our organization, I represent the Church of the Nazarene Incorporated. That's the corporate entity for the denomination that's located at the Global Ministry Center. Unlike the other offices within the church, such as a general superintendent, general secretary, general treasurer, the General Counsel is not anything like that. That is a term of art that's used throughout the legal industry. It has nothing to do with rank within the denomination. It is simply an indication of the fact that I am the primary attorney for the organization, and as such, oversee the legal issues for the church, advise the corporate officers, the general board, other duties as assigned. And then Joe, as Associate General Counsel, has all of the same authority and all of the same headaches, but without the title. That's basically how it works.
So what are the primary legal issues that you deal with in a, I guess you could say day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year, but what are the areas of legal concerns as a church organization that you probably spend the lion's share of your time working on? We'll be right back with the rest of this episode. But did you know you can receive credit for listening to Holiness Today podcasts? Holiness Today podcasts qualify for lifelong learning with the Church of the Nazarene. To register for lifelong learning, simply go to learning.nazarene.org. The Lifelong Learning Registry provides Nazarene ministers the opportunity to record and report their efforts to develop and maintain a pattern of lifelong learning. Every Nazarene minister is encouraged to engage in a variety of lifelong learning activities. The code for Holiness Today podcast will be listed in the show description. This code can be utilized for this episode and any previous episode you wish to listen to. Thank you for being a listener and sharing in the ministry of the Church of the Nazarene. Now back to the rest of your episode.
Well, for me, the nice things about the job is that there are never 2 days that are alike. We have no idea when we come into the office, for that matter, since the job never ends, we have no idea at any given time what the next phone call or the next email is going to be about. The regular things that we have to be involved in are the corporate compliance matters. There's the human resources law, such as reviewing all of our independent contractor agreements, any type of issues pertaining to employment, all the contracts that the Church of the Nazarene Incorporated is involved in, whether it be speaking agreements, articles for Holiness Today, or whether it's something as big as the arrangements for General Assembly. All of those come through our office for legal review. We also deal with the things that you can't plan for, but have to respond to, the litigation, such as anything involving the sexual abuse of a child, anywhere within the church that is going to come over and land on our desk in some way. We receive calls and emails on a daily basis from district superintendents and church leaders from primarily within the United States, but but additionally around the world about issues that they're dealing with, and they're asking for counsel. We can't, we don't represent the districts or the local churches. And so we don't give legal advice to our district superintendents or our national church leaders, but we are able to direct them in terms of what the manual of the Church of the Nazarene says, advise them about what the precedent is on how others have dealt with the issues that they're dealing with. It can really be just about anything that you can imagine. We also are always looking at changes in the law and how that's going to affect our practices or what we need to be doing proactively as a result of changes that are coming in legislation around the country.
So, with the Church of the Nazarene being in several countries and contexts, you're not dealing with each one of these individual legal matters. You are a liaison for other lawyers in situations, from my understanding. But what does that look like? Let's say an issue comes up in Zimbabwe. How would you deal with that? What would that look like for you? And probably depending on the issue, of course, it would be dependent on the issue. But do we have lawyers around the world on retainer, around the country, or what does that look like?
As issues come up, the more that they directly impact us, at the denominational level, the more likely it is that we're going to make sure that there's local legal counsel to be dealing with that. And then we are the liaisons between that legal counsel and our denominational leaders. If there is something where we're being sued, there's a good chance that we are working with insurance assigned legal counsel. If there are things, Joe and I, just within the last couple of months, have each been dealing with issues in other world areas, whether it be real estate or powers of attorney or church registration issues. And we do have to work with the attorneys who are licensed in those countries. They declare what they need in order to satisfy the requirements of local law there. And then we have to merge that with what the legal requirements are for us, a Missouri corporation that is located and doing business in Kansas. So it's simply not possible for us to be licensed in every nation that we're in, 165 world areas. In fact, it's not possible for us to be licensed in all of the states of the United States. Joe is licensed in 3 states. I'm licensed in 2. And so that leaves a lot where we have to depend upon others who are licensed and who have the experience in those jurisdictions to be able to help us.
And Joe, you started at the Church of the Nazarene. What is it? Just a little under a year, if I'm thinking about this correctly. Probably the last 6 months or so. Is that my understanding on
That's
that?
that's correct. I started July 1 of
So, what were you doing
2024.
before this, and maybe in the first 6 months? What are some of the things that you probably already thought you were going to encounter, or maybe some things that were new that you didn't expect to encounter?
Sure. So prior to joining Mike here at the Church of the Nazarene, I was serving in higher education. I had been working in a couple of small Christian universities almost the decade prior, and in that role, I was serving as a professor in their School of Business or business departments, as well as serving as the university counsel. Which there are obviously some major differences between serving at a university and serving at a church denomination. So that's what I was doing right prior to coming here. Before that, I had my own practice for about 11 years, which gave me a broad experience doing a lot of different things that I actually didn't do a lot of in the university, but have started to come back to the surface in this role. So the types of things that I've done here that I think are different than what I was doing right before here is seeing the similar nature of a general counsel position and the general practitioner in the legal profession. I mean, general practitioners are in some ways farther and fewer between as law becomes more specialized and people look for attorneys that laser focus on particular areas. So having that general practice background allowed me to jump in and see all the different things that our church deals with specifically at the denominational level, but then also thinking about those general principles that we can share with our local church leaders and district superintendents as they run into issues that they might only have once in their career. So is there something specific that I've done here that I did not expect? I think probably I did not appreciate the true breadth of the global church. I mean, as a Nazarene, going to a small Nazarene church out east, I can frankly say that probably it's a neat thing, but probably the biggest eye-opening thing was the true breadth of the global nature of the Church of the Nazarene and how we have been able to help our brothers and sisters all over the world, and things that I would have never been able to foresee that prior to coming in and actually working here.
So the role of General Counsel for the Church of the Nazarene, the role of General Counsel is not a new term, as you said. That's a term used for a lot of corporations. But for the Church of the Nazarene, it was new with you, Mike. Is it my understanding that you started out in global mission and you kind of saw a need for that? But if you could just share a little bit, the culmination and creation of that position based on the needs that you were seeing working in global mission, if I remember correctly. But how did that kind of come to be?
Well, you're right. I'm the first general counsel. I'm the first in-house attorney that the denomination has had. When I applied to work at then Nazarene headquarters back in 2000, when I got my call into ministry, I asked to speak to the legal department, assuming that there would be one, and was surprised to find out there was not, because up to that point, the legal needs could be met by outsourcing that to a couple of different firms that we used here in the Kansas City area. It was around 2008, 2009 that denominational leadership started to talk about bringing legal in and not outsourcing it as much. And that arose out of just the change in our culture, the increasingly litigious nature of our society, and some legal issues that we were facing at the time. And our Board of General Superintendents decided that it would be helpful for us to create a legal office so that we weren't just responding to the legal issues as they came up. We could proactively address these things and hopefully avoid some of the issues that could be big and costly and problematic for us later on. So it was in 2011 that the position was created. And I had the advantage of being the only lawyer who was actually working in headquarters at the time. So it was an easy fit, I guess. And the position, the office, and I have sort of grown together during that time.
So before you were called into ministry and started working at the Global Church of the Nazarene, the Global Ministry Center, or Nazarene headquarters, I guess, what legal practice were you in? What were you serving in? Why law? If you don't mind sharing us a little biographical information, but what brought you to the Church of the Nazarene?
Well, why law? The only thing that I'd ever wanted to be from the time I was 8 years old was to be a prosecutor. That's what I set my goals on. And that's what I did. I was assistant state's attorney of Woodford County, Illinois. Loved it. It was everything I'd imagined. It was incredibly fulfilling. And I thought that I would be there the rest of my career. But on March 21, 1999, well, my then fiance and I were attending a mission service at Church of the Nazarene in Eureka, Illinois. God suddenly spoke and said, if you ever want to be fulfilled in anything you ever do again, you're going to come and work for me. I had no idea at that time what that was going to look like, what that meant, but it resulted in us leaving Central Illinois, coming out to Kansas City to go to seminary, got a job at headquarters in our stewardship department, working as plan giving coordinator, helped get the foundation started, and then for 7 years worked in our World Mission Department, then Global Missions Department. That's that's a journey that I couldn't have anticipated. Looking back at it now, it's been over 25 years since God called. Looking back at it, I see his hand at work. I see that he had everything worked out. It was, I wouldn't change a thing about what he did. At the time, it threw me for a loop. I thought he was asking me to give up the law. I honestly thought, what on earth could a lawyer possibly do for the church? What sort of issues could the church ever have to deal with that they would need a full-time lawyer? Well, that was just ignorance on my part. But God knew what he was doing. And in the years before I was placed in this general counsel position, I see now that all he was doing was preparing me, giving me the training by exposing me to the different parts of the church, not just different parts of headquarters, but different parts of the denomination, seeing the Church of the Nazarene around the world. All of that was just him sitting me in class to get me ready for this role.
So how has God used your previous role as a prosecutor at the Global Ministry Center? And any good stories coming out of that?
First of all, I don't know how the rest of my fellow preachers learn how to preach without having first learned how to do a jury trial. That's my primary approach to sermon preparation. I have never stopped being a prosecutor. The pursuit of justice is a passion for me, and so that very much has driven what I do in this role. So the issues that I deal with, the most serious ones, such as whenever a child has been hurt anywhere in the denomination, that is, I still feel like I'm in the state's attorney's office. I'm looking out for the interest of the victim. I'm wanting justice to be done. It has not been that big of a change, other than I don't see the inside of a courtroom anymore. But the whole approach is pretty much the same. I always say I would be the world's worst defense attorney because my heart wouldn't be in it. I strongly believe that everyone has the right to counsel. They need to have somebody there who can represent their interest. I would not be good at it. I actually have to believe in my client. I have to believe in the cause in order for me to be effective. Well, the nice thing is, as a prosecutor and as general counsel for the Church of the Nazarene, I wholeheartedly have always believed in the cause. I don't have to fake it. I fully support our denomination, our doctrine, our board of general superintendents, our denominational leaders. I've never had to make excuses for them because it's very much consistent with what I believe, with what drives me. So that has made my job very much easier.
And Joe, how about you? When did you sense the call to the legal profession? How did God work through you in that, and how did you wind up at the Church of the Nazarene?
Yeah, so it's very different than Mike's. I was not thinking about this as an 8-year-old when I was playing with Transformers and GI Joes. In fact, I had always had a heart for ministry, and I would say, the way that I've described it to others is that as a young man coming of age, I had a very shallow, naive view of what ministry is. I mean, if you would have asked me when I was 16, I probably would have told you it was either being a pastor or a missionary. And as I started to go to college, I'm a first generation college graduate, I wanted to go to seminary myself, actually. And so I went off to college, went to Torres Seminary, only to find out you had to have an undergrad degree. Fast forward, I decided to finish that undergraduate work before I could before I go to seminary. And I was actually thinking about what I really wanted to do and praying about it. And I was sitting in a church when a pastor said that he believed that the JD, which is the Juris Doctorate, the degree that's granted to law students to become attorneys, is the new MDiv for pastors in America in the 21st century. And I, don't know if I fully understood at the time what he was saying, but it resonated with me. And I started to explore law school as an alternative to seminary, and prayed about it. Doors opened, and that's what I ended up doing. I ended up shifting gears, and instead of going to seminary, going to law school. When I graduated law school, so I got married between my junior and senior year of college. Highly recommend it. And my wife helped put me through law school. When I graduated, I did not necessarily want to jump into a position that would have me working, 120 hours a week, because I was a married man, and my wife and I wanted to have a family. So I accepted a position at a small firm in Western New York. From there, over time, I ended up starting my own practice, and we got involved with the Wesleyan Church in New York. And when we relocated to Pennsylvania, that is when we got involved with the Nazarene Church. I remember my wife really liked the Nazarene Church, and I called my Wesleyan pastor and learned that he actually had started in the Nazarene Church himself, so that he did not foresee us having any concerns with doctrine and the way things were done, and that we would be a good fit there. So we joined the Nazarene Church in Pennsylvania. I started serving as a trustee there. We started getting involved and that's how I became a Nazarene. And then that role at the church as a member and a trustee is how I learned about this position, which brought me here. Tying all that together, it was about 8 years ago when I felt God tugging me to take these skills he had given me and do more than just run my own office. And it was that call into Christian higher ed that led to a complete shift from a private practice attorney into one that is ministry focused full time, but using my skills as a lawyer. So there's been this a bit of a journey there, but it full circle. It goes from having a heart of ministry, thinking I wanted to be in a pastorate, running from that, only to end up here in Lenexa, getting to serve the church in this position, which I love. I mean, it's really a dream come true. Not even something I ever fathomed as a possibility.
So what was your private practice? What law did it focus on? Or
So it was in a rural community. And for those that live in a rural community, they would understand this. Those in urban communities may not always appreciate it so much, but you had to be a jack of all trades. You're going to starve if you tried to specialize in a rural community. So my practice included real estate, it included family law, it included criminal defense, it included municipal law, it included helping people with their estates, but it also allow me to really embrace the idea that we're both attorney and counselors at law. So I got to do a little bit of everything. I would say that my primary areas of focus at the time that I made the shift were family, and municipal, and real estate matters. But I did a little bit of everything. I was certified as an attorney for children in New York State, which allowed me to represent the interest of children that were caught up in the system, which I enjoyed very much. And oftentimes when I look back on it, that was one of the hard things to give up when I left private practice, was that advocacy for those that so often don't have a voice in our system.
for our pastors that are listening, if they feel like they're in trouble, they should call Joe. But if they want to get someone else in trouble or need some prosecution help, they call Michael. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
But on a serious question, for local churches and districts, how do they benefit from the General Counsel services? What is the interaction if we do have pastors listening? And because I know you guys talk to district superintendents, I know you talk to pastors, but what does that look like?
Well, for a pastor, if you're a pastor and you call me about an issue, one of the first questions I'm going to ask you is, have you talked to your district superintendent? So I would encourage pastors to first start with your district superintendent. There's a reason why our denomination is structured the way it is. And if there is a need for legal counsel, the district superintendent, the district office is most likely going to be the one that can connect you with somebody who is licensed in your state, who has familiarity with the Church of the Nazarene. We primarily deal with district superintendents just because it's so much easier to deal with 80 something people within the USA Canada region than the how many thousand churches do we have? It's just the economy of scale is such that we have to work with DSs. And what we do is, first of all, we'll talk to them about what the manual says. We'll talk to them about what general common law principles are, the precedent of how others have dealt with these types of situations. The manual is over 400 pages, and most people don't sit down and read it cover to cover. And even if you do, there are some provisions in the manual that you could be in ministry for 50 years, and there's some parts of the manual that will never apply to you. So one of the things that we're able to do, since we deal with this stuff every day, is point out those provisions of the manual that do apply. We also have knowledge about the rulings of the Board of General Superintendents, and can help them in that way. And then, since we always recommend that you have local counsel who's licensed in your state and is qualified to actually advise you, when a pastor, a church, or a district, when they do have an attorney involved, we can talk directly to the attorney and simplify things. We can quickly point out those provisions in our manual, within our polity, that are going to be relevant to the issues that are going on. Sometimes we can provide them with court filings that have been used in other situations, so that so your attorney doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. Whatever we can do, that's a resource that we want to be able to provide. It's something that was an unexpected aspect of creating the Legal Services Office. At the time that this was started up, we didn't expect that we would have the type of interaction with the districts that we do. But that's the advantage of a connected church, the way we are. Since the downside is that you basically can't do anything without getting somebody else in trouble. But the advantage is, since we are all connected, we can help each other. And so that's a resource that we do try to provide.
Are there any frequently asked questions or common questions that you receive from district superintendents, or is it just kind of a variety all over the place? But is there some that you just kind of hear quite frequently that you kind of just respond to almost automatically at this point in time?
Yes, I've got a standard email that I send out as soon as I hear that there's been an embezzlement issue that they're looking into. As the district superintendent is explaining the facts to me, I pull up my standard email and customize it to send it out, because I know it's the first time that individual has dealt with the situation, but we get them about once a month. We have the most common thing I probably hear is from a district superintendent. He or she will apologize and say, "I'm so sorry I'm bothering you. I'm sure that nobody else bothers you the way I do." And I have to reassure all of them, one, you're not bothering us. That's one of the advantages of, it's one of the things you get when you pay the World Evangelism Fund. Now, if you don't pay the World Evangelism Fund, you need to let me know now so I can hang up the phone and save us all a lot of trouble. But it's not a bother. And I tell every new district superintendent that they should not hesitate to contact us. I tell them that I will rarely enjoy what it is we're talking about, but I will always be glad to talk to the district superintendent. And that's an advantage that I was not expecting out of this role, is the close friendships that I've been able to develop with church leaders. There's something that happens when you go through a crisis together that creates a close relationship, and I've come to value that.
So my very limited knowledge of law and history, but is there still differences in the United States today between sectors of ecclesiastical law and civil law? Is there back and forth between the two? Do you study different things going into this field? Are there certifications you have to take or anything like that working for a church organization? What's the relationship?
There's no special certification. So anyone who is licensed to practice law is theoretically qualified to deal with the legal issues for a church. But having said that, there are things involved in religious liberties aspects, especially in the United States, that do not apply across the board. And that is another advantage if a church or a district has an attorney, to have that attorney get in touch with us, because we do tend to specialize in that area. Employment law, for example, in most businesses in the United States, you're not permitted to discriminate on the basis of religion, for example. Well, guess what? In the church, you do get to discriminate on the basis of religion, and you kind of should. It makes sense that a church should be able to be choosy and hire a pastor who is legitimately a Nazarene, not just in name, but fully in beliefs. You couldn't get away with that at Walmart or McDonald's, but you can and you should here. So that is a difference that comes into play. There are other aspects, such as our sincerely held religious beliefs that protect us. If in many organizations throughout the country, you cannot make employment decisions on the basis of if somebody was in a same-sex marriage, for example, that's a protected status for a lot of employers, but it is not for the Church of the Nazarene, because our sincerely held religious beliefs are very, very clear about our theology of marriage and the sanctity of marriage and of human sexuality. So that is, it's not a special licensing, but it is a particular area of knowledge that we do have to know about and deal with all the time.
So does the Church of the Nazarene, or do you and your department interact with other denominations or other affiliations of organizations? Do you are there regular meetings or connection groups of people in, as you mentioned, marriage law? Obviously, there's denominations that don't hold to the biblical standards of marriage, so they wouldn't probably be meeting in the same legal counsel groups as you. But does the Church of the Nazarene associate with other groups outside of our denomination?
Yes, I'm involved with a couple different groups. One is General Counsel for denominations. We get together a couple of times a year, and we're always exchanging emails because the issues we deal with are kind of unique to us. There's another organization that Joe and I are both in, that is in-house counsel for evangelical ministries. And we have a once a year gathering. We have Zoom meetings every other month, and always exchanging emails. I'm looking at my email right now, and there's 2 requests within our groups for us to join in amicus briefs, friend of the court briefs on some issues that are potentially relevant to all of us. So we have that kind of interaction going on all the time. And when we have questions that come up, it's much easier to just send a group email out to other general counsel saying, "Hey, have you dealt with this at all?" Because lawyers, here's a secret that you're not going to hear from most lawyers, but as a profession, we are the laziest of professions. None of us like to have to do something for the very first time. So if we can find that somebody else has already dealt with an issue, we will be quick to jump on that and make it our own. Especially now that Joe and I can't charge by the hour, there's no advantage to us dragging anything out.
That's funny. So, Joe, you were teaching before you came here. Are you going to try and teach while you're here in Kansas City?
Yeah, so I believe wholeheartedly in higher education generally, but specifically Christian higher education. I really think that Christian higher education is the best kind, and if it's Christian, it ought to be better. So, coming from the classroom and to not being in the classroom is a little bit of adjustment. I truly enjoyed it. I love my students. I still stay in touch with a lot of them, and I have maintained a position as a online adjunct at one of the institutions I was with, which it's not the same as being in the classroom. But to answer, yes, if an opportunity were to get back in the classroom that I could fit into my schedule, even as an adjunct, I would love to do it. I mean, I really enjoy teaching. My background, professionally as a lawyer, but then also as an entrepreneur, it brought me to teach business classes. So one of the primary types of business classes would be business law, employment law. But then I also had I've taught a lot of different classes, but all of them were in the business realm. So I didn't teach theology, didn't teach history, didn't teach English, things like that. It was all within, students that were becoming accountants or MBAs or business administration, things of that nature.
So if you didn't study law, or God said, I need you to get another degree, but it's not going to be anything to do with law, what do you think you would have studied? Or you mentioned an MDiv. You think it would have been theology or something like that? Or what do you think you would have?
Yeah, I think it would have been when I started to try tiptoe away from theology, in addition to looking at the JD, I also looked at a master's in communication as well as MBA. Sort of this other life. I spent 12 years in the restaurant business before entering my professional life, and I've always wondered if I had not become an attorney, would I be a restaurateur? I just don't know, but I really don't know. But I think I think theology, law, business, and communications were the areas I was most interested in.
Michael, what about you? What do you think? What do you think in other area? If you had to get a degree right now, had to do it, what would you choose to do it in?
My passion's always been history of the presidency. I've thought if I went on to get a PhD, it would be in political science, dealing specifically with the presidency.
You used to give work with the Truman Museum. Is that right? Remember that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Did you give
Yes.
tours there? What capacity did you work there?
Yeah, I was a docent there. I had to stop doing that when headquarters moved over and became the Global Ministry Center. When we moved from our old location in Kansas City to Lenexa, it became too difficult to drive over there. But yeah, I did that for about 10 years and really enjoyed it.
So if you could go back and witness any moment in history outside of Scripture, what would it be?
Oh, the Constitutional Convention. That would have been. I would love to have been a fly on the wall, even with Madison's commentaries about what was going on, and he did such an excellent job because he had almost perfect recall about everything that was said. To be there and to actually witness all of that was going on at that time, I would have loved that.
Joe, for you, if you had to time travel to somewhere in Scripture now, what period of Scripture? What would you want to witness in Scripture?
Oh, in Scripture. Oh, shoot, I was already thinking about out of Scripture, like
you can do out of Scripture too. Yeah.
Watching the
like
Vikings embark for the first time from the shores. Gosh, if I could see any moment in Scripture, that's a really tough question.
Yeah, you feel compelled to say the birth or the cross or resurrection.
Yeah, well, there's certainly those things, but I think so. I really think it would be intriguing to see David sling Goliath. I mean, to actually like witness that. Gosh, I mean, that's a really tough question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really
I'm a
don't
sucker
know.
for disaster movies, and this is going to sound really morbid, but the flood would just be insane to see as long as I was on the boat, or
Yeah.
hovering above the waters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to give that some more thought. I might have to get back to you.
Yeah. Michael, what about you? What about Scripture?
Well, I'm not sure why. The immediate thought that came to mind would be when Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden, just because I've always tried to picture that, and it's hard for me to do it. Not the most pleasant moment in human history, but the most pivotal up until the cross. So I guess I'll go with that.
either one of you can answer this. I'm just going to throw out some get to know you questions, so be prepared. But favorite band to listen to, favorite music genre or band to listen to.
Well, when I was in high school, I liked a lot of pop punk. So I listened to bands like MXPX and Newfound Glory. As I've gotten older, I've become more of an audiobook guy. I
Yeah.
mean, I do listen to music, but I listen to a lot more audiobooks than I do recorded music. So it's I don't even know, who current artists are. I mean, well, everyone's heard of what's her name, the girlfriend of the guy in the Chiefs around here. But
That
um,
girl. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I can't really think of any. Oh wow, that's a hmm.
Michael, what about you? Who's your do you have a single band that is your favorite?
I don't listen to a lot of music. Secular, I'd probably say U2. And then Christian would be Newsboys, the old Newsboys,
Yeah.
back from the 90s. Uh, but I'm not much of a music person at all, as anyone who has stood next to me during the worship time in church would be able to attest to.
So favorite book, Joe. You're an Audible listener. I'm assuming that's the platform you use on that one. What's a favorite book you've read recently that you'd recommend?
Oh, so it's actually this series of books. It's been a little while since I've kept up with it, but it's oh my gosh, the name of it slips my mind. It is it's a time travel series, but the genre I like is time travel when it comes to fiction. Yeah, when it comes to fiction, I like time travel like books. When it comes to nonfiction, I enjoy business and history.
It's not Outlander, is it? Is it a pastime traveler?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
It's this the author is from Oregon and it takes place in this little town in Oregon and it's like the Middle Falls time travel series.
Okay.
The author is Sean Inman and but it's the most unique take on time travel that I have ever come across. So I'll leave it at
Check
that.
that out. Yeah. Michael, what about you?
My favorite series of all time is The Chronicles of Narnia. I still reread the whole series probably once a year. Most recent book I just finished, Leadership in Turbulent Times by Doris Kearns Goodwin, that looks at how different crises affected the leadership of several presidents like Lincoln, um, Johnson, Theodore Roosevelt, and that was really good, very insightful.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Joe is going to be learning it all, but have you guys kind of sectioned off what areas of legal practice you're going to focus on going forward, or is it you guys going to be covered in all both utility fielders on every aspect? Are you going to be focusing on a certain aspect, Michael, and then Joe's the other, or how's that going to work out?
We're still working that out. Joe has a lot more uh, patience with the contractual stuff than I do. And so he's taken on a lot more of the contract review. He also, because of his experience, his education, things that are related to education law, that's his specialty. And so I tend to defer to him on that. Uh, but we're still working that out. We should theoretically be set up where anyone can come to either one of us and be able to get the same answer. I try to encourage folks to go to him simply because he's a nicer person than I am. But that's also to limit the amount of work that I have to deal with myself.
Joe, are there any particular areas at the GMC that you think? What are some of the best early memories of being at the Global Ministry Center?
It's a neat place. I think the gigantic inflatable globe is really cool. I like that. And in fact, with it being so cold out, I've been trying to just walk during lunch just to get my blood flowing so I don't fall asleep after I eat. And I'll usually take a couple laps around that globe. As far as the one area that's most intriguing to me is that I haven't got to go to yet is underground. I keep hearing
Yeah.
about it. It's so
Yeah.
mysterious. I'm almost afraid that my expectations are so high. I just want to leave it a mystery. Um, I think it's a neat no it's I would say as far as like those kinds of things in the building itself, but I actually what I really like about it is the open concept and this even though you might not see people every day, there seems to be a genuine camaraderie
Yeah.
amongst everyone that works there, no matter what their particular role or responsibility is. And I really like that. Like that is something that is very refreshing and has been, I don't know, people say hi to me, they wave to me, whether they know me or not. And I like that. And so I do appreciate that. The one thing I didn't know, I just learned, I think I learned it in orientation, but I forgot, is I scan to get out too. I've only been scanning to come in. And so now I have officially started scanning to get out of the building.
We got to know if you're in or out, we got to
That's
keep
right.
track of that. So
Well, yeah, as I was told by the building manager, is if you don't scan out, they'll be looking for your corpse in the morning.
And here I've just been assuming you've been working 24 hours a day. I'm going to have to review, I'm going to have to change my performance review comments about you.
Michael, who reviews that? Is that you? Do you keep track of all that? No. I would assume Judy's overseeing us on that one, huh?
Yep. Judy, if when in doubt about who does something, Judy is the answer.
Go to Judy. Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you for spending this time. I hope to do another episode in the future. I think it would be good to have some regular contact with our lawyers. It's always fun to pick your brains. Any leaving thoughts or remarks or stuff you want to leave us with? I usually ask at the end of the episode what we can be praying for, but as we're thinking about General Counsel, so much to be praying for. But what are some of the things that both of you will be facing in the years to come that you'd like to see come out of the General Counsel Department and maybe in the Church of the Nazarene more broadly speaking?
I guess the immediate thing that comes to mind is that earlier you had asked what's the most common question we get from district superintendents, but the most common question or issue that is raised from the constituency in general is the expectation that our denominational leaders, especially the Board of General Superintendents, they seem to think that they have this authority to do whatever it is they want to do. And we spend a lot of our time simply directing people to keep them in the proper lanes. If somebody is upset with a pastor, a professor, whatever it is, it seems like their immediate reaction is, well, why don't the general superintendents do something about it? But we are a denomination that is structured on the manual. The General Assembly has created rules about how we go about doing certain things, and most of the stuff that people want the general superintendents to do, the manual doesn't give the general superintendents the authority to do that. So, if I could give some general recommendations to folks who are upset about stuff, I would advise them to take a look at what the manual says you're supposed to do about this, or who has the authority to do something about it, so they don't waste all their energy being upset with somebody who has no more authority than they do to deal with a particular issue. As a holiness denomination, holiness is all about giving up control, surrendering control to the Lord. And we are a denomination that has clear rules about who has authority in various areas. As in terms of prayer request, I would say that I would want prayer that we all learn to submit to the authority that God has put in place for us. First, that we submit to Him, that we submit to the authority of the Scripture, that we submit to the authority in the structure that we have agreed to within the Church of the Nazarene, if everybody stays within their own lanes, it's amazing how things tend to take care of themselves. But when we stray out of that, or we try to get people to do things that they're really not authorized to do, that's where everything comes crumbling down.
Joe, it looked like you had a thought there too.
Well, yeah, tying back into the higher education piece, this morning on my mind is prayers for the schools and students and faculty. So I know that by the time people are listening to this, we may be some time out, but this is the return to campus day for the spring or winter semester, depending on what the schools call it, for many, many, many schools around the country. So this is that's actually been on my mind since I got up this morning, and so certainly with our Nazarene schools, but all the Christian schools, just those students, those faculty, those administrators, higher ed generally has some big hurdles that it's facing in the United States, and then those can be amplified for our Christian institutions.
Thank you. Would you guys like to leave on a would you rather? I wrote up some ridiculous would you rather questions. You guys want to would you rather?
My kids like to play that. I haven't played in a while though. So sure, I'm down.
All right, Joe, I'm going to give you the most ridiculous one. My wife wrote this one up. So, would you rather your skin change to the color of your mood? So if you're angry, it turns to a specific color. Happy, whatnot. So your skin is just pigmenting. Or everything you did the previous day be tattooed on your body the next day.
My skin changed to the color of my mood.
All right, Michael, this one's for you. This is a little bit of a superhero one. Would you rather be able to fly anywhere? You absolutely can fly. You can hover. You could, no issues with flying, and have that ability, or not fly but be able to walk. So if you take the flying thing, you're not able to walk again. But you can hover. You can hover next to people.
I'd fly. If I could fly, I wouldn't want to do anything else. That's
just awkwardly hover next to people without
otherwise?
walking. I would choose that too. I would just be the awkward guy hovering next to people and not walking anymore. But
Of course, I'm the one that if I had a superpower, that I've always found it ridiculous that anybody that their secret identity is as a powerless person. If I had a superpower, that's the only personality I would be exhibiting all the time. So
what would be okay?
That's just me.
That's a follow-up. What would your superpower be if you could pick one?
Well, it would be flying.
Flying.
So that would be
it.
But if I had to combine them, I mean the best superhero out there, without question, and this is scripturally based, is Spider-Man. The only problem with Spider-Man is that he doesn't fly. So if I could combine powers and have Spider-Man, but have the ability to fly, I mean that's just the ideal person.
That's funny. Here's one that was a legal jargon one that I resourced from the internet. But would you rather have to explain legal jargon to a kindergartner, or argue a case in court dressed as a superhero?
If I wasn't going to be held in contempt, I would be dressed as a superhero. But since I think prosecutors are superheroes, I would argue I was dressed as a superhero every time I was in court.
Here's one for you, Joe. Here's a good one, and then I'll leave us on this. Sorry, I just think they're so ridiculous. But would you rather accidentally hit reply all on every email, or accidentally hit send on a draft email with gibberish?
I think I'd rather accidentally hit send on a draft email with gibberish.
Yeah. It seems like the reply all would be permanent there.
So. Damage control would be a lot easier to play.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the time. I hope to do this again soon. So, thanks for spending this time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Holiness Today podcast. If you enjoyed this production and wish to hear more, visit holinesstoday.org/podcast or find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.